All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to Diabetes Talk. I'm your host, Charlie O'Connell. We are broadcasting live and direct from the GLUCOSEZONE studio here in New Haven, Connecticut. I want to thank everybody who just joined us for that awesome live GLUCOSEZONE workout. And I want to encourage everyone, if you haven't joined us yet for one of our workouts, download the GLUCOSEZONE app, try it for free. I guarantee you, you are going to have a positive experience, and I can't wait to see you in the GLUCOSEZONE. Now, let's do a couple shout outs as we're getting started. First off, I want to shout out Marisol joining us on YouTube. It is great to see you here, Marisol. Okay. I also want to do a big shout out to Dan Rakiak. Dan, it is great to see you too here on Facebook. Okay. And on Instagram, Diabetic Life Support has joined us. That's an interesting new one. Diabetic Life Support, it's great to have you here. Let me know where you're logging in from. Lisa Hammond is here. Jeanette is here. Guys, GLUCOSEZONE around the world. We had, in our live exercise class tonight, we had people from the Philippines, India, the United States, the United Kingdom, Ireland, literally all over the place, okay? True global community of people ready, willing, and able to take the fight to diabetes, and it was really awesome. I'm feeling pumped up. Donnie Ray is joining us in the app. Donnie Ray, it is great to have you here. So, today's topic, guys, okay, is understanding what the diagnosis of prediabetes means, or what being at risk for diabetes means. And I really want to encourage you, please share this talk. If you have friends, if you have family that are at risk for diabetes, that have diabetes, that have been diagnosed as prediabetes, okay, and they're not sure really what that means, this talk is going to really help them understand, okay? But before we do that, we've got a great question right off the bat from Kathleen, okay? Kathleen is joining us on YouTube. And what Kathleen asked was, can you give us one to do? So Kathleen says, I love doing glucose lowering routines. That's awesome, Kathleen. So guys, one of the categories of workout that we have in the GLUCOSEZONE app is something called glucose lowering, where they are exercise solutions designed specifically to lower your blood sugar, okay? And she asked, can you give us one to do after a meal? One that will lower glucose levels for prediabetes that is long enough to be effective and short enough to do after meals. All right. So, Kathleen, that is a great request. Okay? So, here's what I would say. The first thing is, if you have prediabetes, okay, doing any level 1 lower body or level 1 total body workout in the GLUCOSEZONE is going to be a fantastic workout to do after a meal. And the reason why that is the same reason why healthcare providers advise you to go for a walk after a meal to control something called postprandial glucose excursions. So what postprandial glucose excursion means is spike in your glucose level after you've eaten a meal, okay? When you go for a walk, or if you want to do a GLUCOSEZONE workout, I would suggest selecting a lower body level 1 or a total body level 1 workout, okay? What those workouts are going to do is dampen the excursion of glucose, because when you exercise, right, that causes the absorption of excess glucose by excess insulin. And after you've eaten a meal, you have both of those things present in your blood. You have excess sugar, but you also have excess insulin, and exercise stimulates the absorption of that, okay? So that's a great question, okay? And that's what I would recommend. And for everybody who's also looking for a similar type of solution, okay, maybe you don't have time to go for a walk. Maybe going for a walk isn't realistic for you, okay? Download the GLUCOSEZONE app. try one of our level 1 workouts, whether it's lower body, total body, or even if you're at work, you can do a chair-based workout, okay? All right, that's really, really a fantastic question. All right. The next question, all right, we are right off the top here with some great questions. What is the connection between hypothyroidism and prediabetes? Okay, so, and that's from Nikita, who's joining us from India. So Nikita, that's a fantastic question. So there's actually a connection between hypothyroidism and diabetes in general. It's not just limited to prediabetes. And basically what you need to understand is that your thyroid is part of the endocrine system, okay? What the endocrine system is in your body is essentially a system of hormone balance, okay? And it's very, very common for people living with diabetes to have an imbalance in their thyroid. And what hypothyroidism means is low, okay? The hormones coming out of your thyroid are too low, all right? And the actual connection, the question of why is that connected, that's a great question. There is no actual answer of here's why hypothyroidism is connected to diabetes or prediabetes, but it is very, very common, okay, that people living with diabetes also have issue with their thyroids. All right. Now, we've got several other people joining us on Instagram that are new people joining us, and I'm glad you're here. We've got a great, I love these Instagram names, okay? We've got Powerful Alley Whacking Jut. Powerful Alley Whacking Jut, is great to have you here on Instagram. And Mari, it is great to have you here on Instagram too, okay? Okay, now, let me just get back, guys. I'm going to answer all of these questions, okay? And I'm so happy. We've got such a great crowd going on right now on YouTube. Veronica, I see you. Hanan, I see you joining us from Saudi Arabia, okay? It is great to have you guys here. But let me start breaking down what is prediabetes, or what does being at risk for diabetes, okay? So, if you were told by your doctor that you have sugar in your blood, that you have elevated blood sugar, that you have an elevated fasting blood sugar, that you have impaired glucose tolerance, or you have an elevated random blood sugar level, you may be at risk for diabetes, or you may have something called prediabetes, okay? Prediabetes is when your blood sugar levels are higher than normal, but not high enough to be diagnosed as type 2 diabetes. And this is something that affects 1 out of 3 Americans, okay? So this is a major, major, major issue in America and really across the world, okay? And 90% of people living with prediabetes don't know it. So this is such an important topic to be talking about. So let's really, really break it down, okay? The first thing, let's actually break down what the diagnosis of diabetes is, okay? So a diagnosis of diabetes is when you have an A1C of 6.5 or higher. Now, what the heck is an A1C, okay? An A1C it's something called the A1C hemoglobin test. And what the A1C hemoglobin test is an examination of the red blood cells in your blood, and it examines the glycation of those red blood cells by sugar molecules, okay? So, something that's important to understand, why are elevated blood sugar levels bad for you in the first place, okay? Is a very, very important question. So I'm going to give you an analogy, guys, as to why elevated blood sugar levels are bad for you. And I'm just going to use a very, very simple analogy. Have you ever put sugar in your coffee or tea before? Right? Everybody has, okay? What happens when you put the perfect amount of sugar in your coffee or tea? What happens to the sugar? The sugar dissolves, right? and you drink the coffee or the tea, and you can taste the sweetness of the sugar, but there's no actual physical remnant of the sugar. What happens when you put too much sugar in your coffee or tea? Right? When you take the last sip, what has happened? Some of that sugar has not dissolved, and the actual granules of sugar are left in the liquid, and when you drink the coffee or the tea, you can actually feel the granules of sugar on the tip of your tongue. Okay, a granule of sugar is very, very similar to a molecule of blood glucose in terms of their shape, and they're both shaped like a shard of glass. Okay? Sharp, jagged, pointy-edged objects. Now what I want you to do, I want you to take your fingernail, okay, and I want you to just start scratching your forearm. And I want you to immediately notice what's starting to happen to your forearm. Your forearm, the skin on your forearm is getting irritated, okay? What would happen if you just kept scratching your forearm? Right? Eventually, you would damage the skin. Okay. The reason why elevated blood sugar levels are so bad for you is if you have molecules of blood glucose that are shaped like shards of glass circulating through your body at elevated levels, they start to scrape, damage, and glycate the inside of your blood vessels and your red blood cells. Okay? Your red blood cells are the actual cells that carry oxygen throughout your entire body. Okay. Your A1C report is a report on how much glycation has occurred on your red blood cells, and it's expressed as a percentage. So if you have an A1C of 6.5, that means that 6.5% of the red blood cell has been damaged or glycated by glucose molecules. Okay? And it's very, very important that you understand that. Now, if you have an A1C of 5.7 to 6.4, so 5.7% to 6.4%, that means you have prediabetes. So in other words, if your A1C report comes back as a percentage of 5.7, that means 5.7% of the red blood cells have the red blood cell has glycation on it. Okay? So that is what an A1C report is. Okay? And that is how you know if you have prediabetes or if you're at a high risk for diabetes. Now, other ways to diagnose prediabetes and diabetes, okay, is if you do a fasting plasma glucose test. Okay, so what a fasting plasma glucose test is, you wake up, you don't eat anything, you let your body, you've had at least 8 to 10 hours since the last time you ate anything, and you go and have your blood sugar tested. If your blood sugar comes back between 100 and 125, you may have prediabetes. Another thing is called a 2-hour oral glucose tolerance test. If you take an oral glucose tolerance test and your number comes back between 140 and 199, okay, you may have prediabetes or you may be at risk for diabetes, okay? If you take a random glucose test and the number is greater than 200, then you have diabetes. All right. Now, let me just stop right there. I really just broke it down. I want to encourage you guys, very, very important, understand what diabetes is, what your A1C report is, and what prediabetes is, right? And to summarize, diabetes is when you have an A1C of 6.5 or above. Prediabetes is when you have an A1C of 5.7 to 6.4. Okay. Now, let me just stop right there. And I want to acknowledge somebody, okay? So, Veronica, who has been joining us in the GlucoSezone app for the last 6 months, okay? And Veronica, I have seen you. Veronica has been with us in the app almost every single day. And she just got back from her doctor's appointment, and here's what her doctor report was. In 6 months, her A1C went from 14.2 to 5.23, and she lost 40 pounds. And she says GlucoSezone was a huge part of her success. Veronica, I am so proud of you that you don't know who you just inspired. I know you just inspired the crap out of me, okay, to put the work in. Guys, people don't make these things up, okay? I want to thank you, Veronica, for sharing that, because it is possible. And it doesn't matter where you've been. It matters, where are you ready to go? Where are you ready to take back control of your life? Are you ready to put the hard work in? People like Veronica are showing you that it can be done. And Veronica, we are so honored to be a little part of your success. Okay? And that's amazing. That is totally, totally amazing. Imagine that. You go from 14.2 to 5.2. And people say all the time, well, once you have diabetes, you always have diabetes. Don't ever listen to people that tell you that, guys. Okay? Do not listen to people that tell you that, because you just heard from Veronica what 6 months of work can do. That's amazing. That is totally amazing, Veronica. You are awesome. All right. Now, that's crazy. I'm totally blown away by that. Now, we've got another question from Baby Girl. Baby Girl, it's great to have you here. I love that username. Baby Girl says, my dad is pre-diabetic and my sister is also pre-diabetic. My grandmother had diabetes. What are my chances of being pre-diabetic? Okay, this is a great question, Baby Girl. So the answer is the chances are pretty high that you're going to have pre-diabetes. So let's actually really break down the misunderstanding about the genetic role of diabetes. Okay? So to be very, very clear, nobody inherits diabetes. Okay? Nobody inherits diabetes. You do not inherit type 2 diabetes. You do not inherit type 1 diabetes. And in the case of type 1 diabetes, there is zero genetic connection. But having said that, people are genetically susceptible to type 2 diabetes. And your lifestyle, the level of activity, and your eating habits are what going to determine whether or not you develop diabetes. And what people make the mistake of is they make the mistake of inheriting eating habits, inheriting lifestyle habits, and confusing that with the genetic susceptibility of type 2 diabetes. So, what causes the genetic susceptibility of type 2 diabetes? To understand that is actually very simple. All you have to do is understand where and how glucose is stored in your body. Okay? And we call this the parking lot analogy. Okay? There are 4 places in your body where glucose is supposed to be. And those 4 places are your brain, your liver, your muscle, and your fat tissue. Okay? And we call those places the parking lots for sugar. Now, parking lot number 1, the VIP parking lot for sugar in your body is your brain. There should never be a single space empty in your brain. Even if one parking space is empty in your brain for sugar, you'll start to feel hungry. You'll start to feel the effects of low blood sugar. Maybe you've seen that funny Snickers commercial where they say it's Joe Pesci and they say, you're not acting like yourself. And then he eats a Snickers and he comes back to being a normal person, right? That's a funny way of describing when your brain parking lot is empty. Now, your brain requires approximately 130 grams of carbohydrate a day to function properly, okay? And I want you to keep that number in mind. It's a very important number. 130 grams, let me be clear, 130 grams of glucose or 130 grams of carbohydrate. Okay? Now, if your brain parking lot is full, the sugar molecule that you've eaten, it will check your brain. And if there's no need for sugar in your brain, the sugar molecule will travel to the next parking lot, which is your liver. Now, your liver can store between 70 and 80 grams worth of sugar, okay? And that, just for frame of reference, that's like 2 to 3 bananas, okay? Maybe 2 granola bars or 2 juice boxes, okay? Or 1 Mountain Dew, okay? If there are spaces available in your liver, the sugar will be stored in there. But if there's no space, if your liver parking lot is full, it doesn't matter how much insulin is present in your body. No more sugar can be stored in your liver parking lot if the parking lot is full. And if that's the case, the sugar molecule will travel to the next parking lot, which is your muscles. Now, your muscle parking lot is the primary parking lot for the storage of sugar in your body. You can store anywhere between 350 and 800 grams worth of carbohydrate in your muscles. The bigger your muscles are, the more parking space is available for sugar. Okay? It is literally that straightforward. And vice versa. The less you exercise, the smaller your parking lots are, the less space there's going to be available for sugar. Okay? Now, if that's the case, if a sugar molecule shows up to your muscle parking lot and there's no room, it doesn't matter how much insulin is present in your body. If there's no room for sugar in your muscles, there's no room for sugar in your muscles. And when that happens, the sugar molecule proceeds to the last parking lot, which is your fat tissue. Your fat tissue is like the long-term parking at JFK Airport. Right? It's the last parking lot on the line. And you're going to check the first 3 parking lots a couple times before heading to the fat parking lot. Now, your fat parking lot is made up of something called adipocyte cells. Okay? And the average person has approximately 4 billion adipocyte cells. And what adipocyte cells are literally cups. They are empty cups. I shouldn't say literally. They are like empty cups where glucose gets converted into a triglyceride and then stored in the cup. It's a liquid droplet of sugar that's been converted into a triglyceride and it gets stored. Now, when your 4 billion adipocyte cells are full, that represents about 30 pounds worth of fat. Okay? So 30 pounds of fat is right at the limit of what a healthy amount of fat is. Now, why is this so important to understand? 2 things. The first thing is, after the age of 25, our bodies start to naturally lose muscle mass. Okay? And we lose muscle mass up to 2% of muscle mass per year. So, If you go from the age of 25 to 40 and you don't exercise, you can actually lose up to 30% of your glucose storing ability. Okay? That's the first thing to understand. The second thing to understand is that once you fill up your fat parking lot, depending on your body's ability to create more adipocyte tissue, you can be genetically susceptible to type 2 diabetes. And here's what I mean by that. Have you ever seen that TV show, My 600-Pound Life? All right, we've all seen that TV show or heard reference to it. Okay. People who weigh 600, 700, 800 pounds, their body's physiology is fundamentally different than the general population. And what's different about their physiology is they have the ability to continuously build more fat parking lots. It's a condition called adipocyte hyperplasia. That is how somebody can weigh 600 pounds and not have type 2 diabetes. Okay? So, a person weighs 600 pounds, let's say every single parking space in their body is full. There's not a single space left for sugar in their body. Then they go to Chipotle. They get a chicken burrito, chips, and a lemonade, and they eat it. And what does their body do? Their body starts construction on a whole new fat parking level. Their blood glucose stays exactly perfect the entire time. Okay? That is not what happens to the general population, and that is specifically not what happens to people who are genetically susceptible to type 2 diabetes. People who are genetically susceptible to type 2 diabetes do not have the ability to just build more and more fat parking lots. They have a very limited fat parking lot. And when you fill up your fat parking lot, okay, there's no place for the sugar to go. And so all the sugar does is start circulating around your body. And how does your body respond to that? Your body responds to that by releasing more insulin. And insulin will do its best to stuff that sugar into your fat cells. It'll do its best to cause the absorption of sugar into your muscles, but only if you use them. This is why exercise has such a profound effect on the type 2 diabetes condition. As soon as you start exercising, you start changing the dynamic of glucose storage in your body. Okay? And if you don't do that, you'll develop something called insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is when your cells become resistant to the effects of insulin. It's not that your body is not producing enough insulin, it's that there's no place for the insulin to store the sugar. And that, my friends, is a very, very easy way to understand what is diabetes, what is prediabetes, what does it mean to be genetically susceptible to type 2 diabetes, and what can you do about it? And I just want to encourage you guys, this whole program, this whole GLUCOSEZONE program is about doing something about it. Every single workout in GLUCOSEZONE is designed to do 3 things: build muscle, increase your sensitivity to insulin, and lose weight. Okay? Empty that fat parking lot out by first emptying out those muscle parking lots. Okay? All right. We got one last question. One last question from Kathleen. And the question is, if you have prediabetes, should you be doing level 1, level 2, and level 3 exercises? And then should you do them every day? So the answer, Kathleen, is the level you should do is whatever you feel that you can challenge yourself and keep up with the exercise. So if you can do level 2, you should do level 2. More challenging exercise is going to burn more calories. It's going to stimulate more glycogen depletion, and it's also ultimately going to improve your sensitivity to insulin. Okay? If you can do level 3, do level 3. It's going to have the same exact effect. But the important thing is you need to be going at your pace. If you just jump right into level 3 and you can't follow it, okay, and you can't keep up with the repetition that the fitness instructor is doing, if you're feeling aches, if you're feeling pain, if you're putting yourself at risk for injury, that's silly. You shouldn't do it, okay? So the recommendation is start with level 1. If you feel comfortable, if you are able to do it, try level 2, right? And follow that pattern. Now, the question about should I do this every day? Yes, the answer is absolutely. You should exercise every day. Every single person that has ever had success incorporating fitness into their life has worked out every single day. And it becomes a fire that burns inside of you. You're going to start to feel like there's something wrong if you're not exercising. Because guess what? There is something wrong if you're not exercising. Human beings are designed to move. Only in the last 100 years have we had the ability to transport ourselves without using our legs. Did you know that the human body is designed to walk from New York to California and back every 6 months? Just let that one sink in for a second. That is what your body is capable of. That is what your body is designed to do. Okay? So start living the way you're supposed to be living. And I promise you, if you're willing to put that work in, you will see incredible transformational and transmutational results. And on that note, we're going to sign off, guys. I want to do a special shout out to Veronica. Thank you, Veronica, for sharing with this whole group, okay, what is possible. I want to do a huge shout out to Butch, to David, joining us on Facebook, to Letitia, joining us on Facebook. Hope is here with us. evic338 on Instagram, and the whole crew on YouTube. Guys, you guys are awesome, okay? I really want to thank you. This is a global community of people who are willing and able to do what it takes to use exercise as a solution to reduce and control their diabetes. And I want to thank you for inspiring me, okay? And I can't wait to see you guys in the GlucoSezone. Good night.